We have been studying draft strategies this offseason. We've looked at robust RB, double hero RB, and now it's time to look at zero RB, the strategy where you forego the running back position for multiple rounds. Some people like to go deeper than others. I like to call it zero RB light when you go a little bit earlier, and zero RB heavy when you do it the traditional way. But usually the trend was about 5 to 10 years ago with zero RB zealots. They would forego the running back position to around double-digit rounds and collect backup running backs, playing the fragility of the running back position, playing how these running backs get hurt from week to week, and capitalizing off the waiver wire while being absolutely stacked every position on their team, allowing them to be weak at one part, but could turn that over by turning and burning their roster on the waiver wire. Today, we're going to go over zero RB, see whether or not it will work with this year's pools of players. We're also going to be looking at drafts and everything else. Before we dig in, though, you need to click that subscribe button right now because we're talking draft strategies. We're talking about these players. We're looking at the draft right now every single day. We're building your dynasty teams. In season, waiver wire. Not just the waiver wire, but deep on the waiver wire to help you build your teams, to help you build your leagues. Click that button, stop missing out. But zero RB, I have experience with that. I have won leagues with it, but I have won leagues with every strategy. It works, but you also have to be very knowledgeable with how you build your team and with your plan of attack during the season. But when we look at Underdog Fantasy, we look at ADP here, it's jacked up with wide receivers. You're not going to have trouble finding a good wide receiver in the draft this year. Whether it's basic redraft, your home league, or an underdog, a wide receiver is going to be there that can give you some upside. Looking at the FFPC round 1 ADP, so this gives you a picture of something you're more likely going to see in your drafts. This is basic redraft, just at higher stakes. The thing is, the wide receivers are still going heavy in the first round, so you're going to get plenty of talent. But with this strategy, you pretty much got to know it going in that you're going zero RB. So you're going to forego Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall, Christian McCaffrey, and company. The thing about that, though, you're going to have upside at the wide receiver position. You're going to be anchored down at wide receiver, and you're going to have that top tier upside while you're still looking at running back later in the draft. And then when we get to the second round, there are a lot of wide receivers to look at. There are a lot of wide receivers here, and it's Underdog. It's a little bit more wide receiver heavy, but pick your poison down the line of the draft. Again, going into this round, you're pretty much automatically thinking, I'm going wide receiver here. ADP saying not to go tight end. Maybe if you're thinking tight end premium in your league, if your format's that way, going to FFPC, very similar when it comes to the values. Very similar, and you're still rocking some of these wide receivers. You got Travis Kelce in there if you want to roll with him. But when we look at round 2, we got just a few running backs there. Just a few, not too many. So a lot of people by default are going zero RB to start off their draft. They may not end up like that in round 3, 4, or 5. But a lot of people are starting their drafts that way just by default. Just by default. So it's not really taboo in the start of drafts right now when you look at ADP and what people are doing, but things get a little bit different in the third round. Some players are moving up because when you look at Underdog Fantasy, it's very wide receiver heavy, but that gives you an indicator how deep the pool is at wide receiver, so you can keep plucking wide receivers. And when you have a deep pool at a position, there are levels to that pool, and you want the topper part of that pool so you can level out of your teammates, because they're going to be jockeying for position, matching each other with the bottom tier of that pool of good wide receivers. But when you have this big pool, you kind of want more wide receivers on the top end so you can get top end results from those wide receivers week in and week out. And that's what a lot of people are trying to do here with the zero RB strategy as well, trying to get those top end results every single week. We're looking at FFPC, still a lot of wide receivers coming off the board, 2 tight ends in round 3, a little bit more running backs, but still we're getting some variety. And you're not forgetting about the tight end position. And depending on your strategy with the quarterback position, some people are naturally just going to go late round quarterback and go double-digit rounds on their quarterback and just stream. And some people want to pay up a little bit. This is going to give you a little bit more flexibility to do that, but also it's going to give you some flexibility to look at tight ends because you don't feel like you're wedged in drafting a running back. You don't feel like doing that, but a lot of people, rounds 1 through 5, if you're going 0 RB light-ish, you're going wide receiver heavy. You'll probably have like 4 wide receivers drafted by then, and that means your flex is going to be stacked at wide receiver as well. So you're also drafting for your flex spot. In the 4th round, we got a lot of wide receivers. We got more tight ends coming off the board. Trey McBride, Travis Kelce. So you can really get stacked up at tight end while getting good and deep at the wide receiver position. Running back still holding strong, but running back still has some upside later in the draft, as we will see. FFPC in the 4th round. More running backs coming up, still wide receiver heavy. So a lot of people are going 0 RB by default or hero RB by default. And that just seems like to be the trend. That's what ADP is saying because we're getting a lot of wide receivers getting bumped up. You may want to draft running backs in this spot, and you're probably watching this video scratching your head, why not? I got the other videos for that. Check those out. Today we're talking about 0 RB. You got a lot of talent to pull from. It's also starting to tear off when you get to rounds 3, 4, 5. So you really want to be jacked up at the wide receiver position. Rounds 1, 2, and 3, really. When you're pulling off your 0 RB, you're going wide receiver heavy, robust wide receiver pretty much. And then after that, you can sprinkle in your tight ends. If you want to pay up for quarterback, that's up to you. That's how you want to play things, how you want to build your team. But looking at the wide receivers rounds 4 through 6, we just looked at round 4 wide receivers. We still got talent. Round 5, Marquise Hollywood Brown to the Chiefs looking good there. Chris Godwin is getting some upside. Calvin Ridley, Keenan Allen, Jay Reed in round 5. And maybe some more in your redraft league. And maybe they fall further. Maybe we go all the way to round 7. But round 6, you got Deontay Johnson. I see him getting a 25+% target share there. Christian Watson gives you the spike weeks. Rashee Rice, he is gelling well in camp right now. Rome Odunze has upside for days. He has as much upside as anybody in the league. He's in a great spot, and he's going in a palatable price in the draft to shoot for upside. And then we go deeper in the draft. Wide receiver at around this point is tearing off. In the middle rounds, wide receiver is tearing off to the point where you just want to shoot for more upside to hope that sticks, like a Jackson Smith-Njigba, players like that. Maybe you catch a Tyler Lockett in the back end, but he gives you a lot of spike weeks as well. But when we look at the running backs in the latter part of the draft, there's some meat here. You really want to make sure you're good to go for running back around round 7 and round 8. That just seems like the most optimal spot. I see like Joe Mixon and Rachaad White bumping up in drafts. We see that in the FFPC. Mixon goes in round 5. Rachaad White goes in round 4. But an underdog the round 6 running back. But there's a lot of meat here in round 7 and round 8. And the reason why we want to pay attention to that part of the draft, because we can still capture RB1 production week to week or high-end RB2 production while being stacked at wide receiver, tight end, have a good bench while looking at this. Going back here, though, what if you got like an Alvin Kamara and it's PPR in your league and you got that stacked with a Raheem Mostert, maybe a Zamir White, if you're into him, James Conner or DeAndre Swift. Maybe those were your 2 running backs. And now you feel like you can hammer running backs in rounds 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, however deep your draft is. And you feel like you can shoot for more upside. You got Tony Pollard, Bijan Robinson, Tyjae Spears, Devin Singletary. Round 9, as you see, once we get past round 8, things start to tear off. Your home league redraft leagues, if running back starts to go crazy, you may want to get your first running back somewhere around round 7, maybe round 6 range at the earliest, round 7 to round 8. But if you're moving later, round 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, so back in the day, they'd wait till running backs damn near tapped out, starters, and we just shoot for upside. You might be starting off with like a Gus Edwards, maybe getting upside plays like Trey Benson, Blake Corum, Marshawn Lloyd, Zach Charbonnet is getting touches. Ray Davis could turn around in Buffalo. there's a lot of upside plays. And when you're going 0 RB, you're going to get a lot more opportunities to take shots at the piñata at these upside running backs, these young guys, these rookies who could pop off with their team, maybe get a good 2 to 4 week run as a starter before the starting running back comes back from injury, but you're able to capitalize on that with a jacked up wide receiver depth chart. This is also going to allow you to go more ham at the waiver wire. So you're going to be able to capitalize on more upside at running back in the back end of your draft. You're able to play the waiver wire a little bit more. It's going to allow you to be more aggressive. You do not have as much sunk cost invested in running back. Running backs get hurt. That is the point of the strategy, the fragility of the position. And you're just saying, hey, I'm opting out. I'm not paying up for the fragility. I'm going to step back. I am going to get some of these cheaper running backs and then slam these upside guys to really build out my team. And when we look at a mock draft here, and this isn't a mock draft really just looking at the players, just closing your eyes and pointing at the players in those rounds in ADP, you come up with something like this, and this is more like a 0 RB light. Amon-Ra, Jalen Waddle, DJ Moore, T. Higgins, Marquise Hollywood Brown, 5 straight wide receivers, and you're jacked at the wide receiver position. You're jacked. You do not even have to think about the waiver wire at wide receiver anymore, or even really think about wide receiver in the back end of the draft. George Kittle, solid at tight end now. Zamir White is your number 1 RB, 8th round, 0 RB light. And then you're following up with Brian Robinson and Gus Edwards. After that, you're pounding running backs, maybe finding other values at other positions, but your priority is upside at running back past round 10 there. Gus Edwards, Brian Robinson, you can really play the matchups with them. Your flex spot is going to be nailed down with wide receivers. You're good to go there. This is what the lineup would look like pretty much. Kyler Murray, Zamir White, Brian Robinson, both those backs are getting touches, can give you production. Amon-Ra, Jalen Waddle, T. Higgins, DJ Moore, playing the matchups there with your wide receiver 3. Your flex spot, look how deep that is. Marquise Brown, Gus Edwards, maybe you got 2 or 3 flex spots. Maybe you go more wide receivers. George Kittle, solid. This allows you to pay up a little bit more at tight end because you do not have to scratch your head at the running back position. But now, 0 RB heavy, because a lot of people would look at that first mock draft and say, that's not 0 RB, that's just drafting, taking running backs a little late. A lot of people really go ham on 0 RB, and they don't start till around the double-digit rounds. And I got to give you what that looks like, and I got to talk about that and the strategies around that. So if you want to try it, you can, or if not, and say it's stupid, you can definitely do that. But this is what it looks like. And you're going hard at wide receiver again. Ja'Marr Chase, Chris Olave, Cooper Kupp, Mari Cooper, Rashee Rice. Getting Kyle Pitts. Again, you can pay up at tight end. Jack Smith-Njigba, you got an upside wide receiver. Joe Burrow, more wide receivers with Tyler Lockett. Gus Edwards is your RB1. Then you go back with something more reliable with Ezekiel Elliott. Then after that, you're hammering running backs. You're hammering Marshawn Lawrence, Kendre Miller, Ray Davis, J.K. Dobbins, Khalil Herbert. The thing about hammering these upside running backs, a lot of them are going to do nothing out of the gates, and a lot of them will give you barely any production throughout the year. But you're stashing, you're hoarding just in case. On top of that, when they're not doing nothing, that gives you more ammo, more roster spots to really go ham at the waiver wire for these running backs to grab that running back that everybody's trying to get. Week 1, Week 2, Week 3, Week 6. Now all of a sudden is the starter because the starting running back got hurt. He's out with a high ankle sprain. We're not seeing him for 5 weeks. Now you got a starter for 5 weeks that you can throw into your lineup, and you're jacked up at all the other positions. That's why we do this. And when you look at a lineup like this, you think, man, I hate the running back position. But remember, you're also streaming running backs too, with your upside guys who are moving up the depth chart due to attrition, injuries per se. And then on top of that, whatever you're picking up off waivers after week 1, or even when injuries occur during training camp, depending on when you draft, you're jacked up at wide receiver, you're jacked up at flex, you're good to go. The position fragility at the running back position isn't really going to hurt you. So you're going to be weak at running back, but you're going to be really strong at wide receiver pretty much everywhere else. But you're choosing to be weak at running back. But I'm going to tell you, you're going to be weak at any position. Because honestly, you may feel good coming out of your draft saying, I'm strong all the way down the board. But once we get deeper into training camp, or we get deeper into the season, it's not going to be that way. And usually that happens at the running back position. Usually people are FOMOing for those backup running backs off the waiver wire. You're jacked up with the high upside guys, it's lottery tickets. You're good to go with that. You're plucking the waiver wire. You got to be active. You got to be patient. You got to have experience with this. If you don't have experience with this and you're not a patient person, this may not be the thing for you, because you also got to turn and burn running backs to and from the waiver wire every week. Keep working, grasping at straws. There's a lot of work at this. You cannot be like a lazy fantasy manager with this strategy. You got to gamble on some injuries, because what if we get into the season, we're 6 weeks in, macro-wise, running backs aren't really getting hurt? That's a thing to look out for. But there's another thing that people, when they're talking fantasy, especially fantasy content creators, that they don't talk about, is when you get multiple people in your draft doing 0 RB, I'm saying 2, 3, 4, or more. When they start doing that, the well at the wide receiver runs dry. You feel good at the running back position because you caught some values, but then attrition hits, and that's not a pretty sight. Usually when I'm in leagues like that, the 0 RB teams just run that wide receiver well dry, and then there's one team really from the people that go RB heavy or just drafting straight up to ADP or whatever with the values will emerge. So it'll be a battle between the 0 RB teams and then that one team that just emerges out of the dust from the RB heavy teams, because they're zapped at wide receiver. They're 0 wide receiver now, and they are trying to win with wide receiver 2s and 3s and fantasies, while the other teams, they're rolling with wide receiver 1s, and now they found some RB 1s off the waiver wire, and it's a big battle. That is something to talk about when it comes to 0 RB and your drafts. So again, when you're drafting, and this is just for all strategies, but this is another strategy to talk about when talking fantasy, watch everybody else's draft board. Watch to see who's going 0 RB, because that's going to let you know what the position pools are going to look like in the next few rounds, and also what other potential values you could get in the next few rounds. If they're starting off going wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver, hard tell that they're going in this. Either they're just catching values, look at the values, play common sense with that, or they're going 0 RB, they're going to pluck off more wide receivers. You may want to get on that wide receiver train a little bit early depending on the values there, but watch the draft boards of who you're playing with. But you do need experience with this, and you do need to be patient. This isn't a strategy for beginners. I think Hero RB, if you're a beginner, I think that's great for you. I think that's a smart one to start with, or even double Hero RB. I don't think this one is great for beginners. You can win leagues, I know, because I've won leagues with them, but I also done with Hero RB, double Hero RB, robust RB, drafting a ton of RBs, doing everything. But I've done so many drafts that I've seen everything. I grade this a B, and that might be because I know it's possible. I've done it. I like the depth I feel at wide receiver. I also like how people are valuing the running backs in this year's class, where you can catch some quality and some upside in the back half in the double-digit rounds that you can capitalize in the draft to really help and impact your team. I think there's a lot of upside here. I think with this strategy, you can win leagues. I think it might be a strategy you see some people win with some big tournaments, especially once attrition starts to hit some of these running backs. Let me know what strategy you're rolling with this year. I want to hear about it. Make sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out. And one thing for watching. Catch you on the next video.